Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the High Five Preschool and Kids Weekly Training Podcast. I'm Kayla, and I am joined today with Isaac and Rachel, some of my great friends. And today we are jumping into the very last week of our content for this month of how God wants me to tell people about Jesus. I am here to share Jesus. All month long with kids, we've been talking about Amp It Up, how we can share about Jesus. In the preschool space, we've been talking about this big news that we have to share about Jesus. And today is a very fun day because we get to talk about, as we plan and prepare for the week ahead, about how we can tell the world about Jesus. So we're going to be looking at Matthew 28 and the Bible story of how Jesus said go. This is that Great Commission passage about how we can go and make disciples of all nations. But before we jump into all the fun Bible story content, Rachel, Isaac, quick question. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go and what would you do? So if you could go anywhere in the world, maybe you've been somewhere in the world before, but money's no expense. You can go anywhere. You can do anything in the world. Where are you going? Where are you traveling to?
Well, I have young kids right now, so I would pick somewhere that's like full of adventure and wonder. And so I would say the Galapagos Islands. I think that would be an incredible trip. National Geographic does a family tour, so you can take your young kids and to see the beauty and the wildlife and snorkeling. I think it'd be a dream.
That sounds so much fun. And like knowing what your kids love to do, like that would be, I think that'd be such, can I sign up with your family and go as one of your kids and like get my little like Polaroid camera out and make our own little scrapbook? That sounds so much fun.
I think it would be amazing.
It sounds like Rachel has done a little bit of research, so she may be going to the Galapagos Islands in her future.
It's on our bucket list, but it is an expensive bucket list item.
Yeah, that's fair. That's really cool. That sounds fun. All right, Isaac, what about you? You are our adventurer as well. Where are you going? What are you doing?
All right, well, currently my wife and I are in the adoption process, and we are actually looking to adopt from Bulgaria. So that is very much in the forefront of my mind. The last year, that's the country that I'm like, I just can't wait to get to Bulgaria to pick up our kid and bring them home. But along that, I'm a hobbyist. Like I like to have hobbies My hobby is having hobbies. So currently one of my hobbies is I've been listening to this podcast by this guy who did his doctorate in Bulgarian history. And he started at like year one of the world, essentially. And like has given me the history of Bulgaria. And I'm so excited to not only pick up my kid from Bulgaria, but for my wife and I to experience this culture of Bulgaria, to like see some of the crazy mountains, see some of the old castles, see some of these really cool places that are in this country while we are there. So if I could go to one place and do one thing, it's definitely go to Bulgaria.
That sounds awesome. And we not only are hoping, but we are praying that the Lord gets you and your wife to Bulgaria so fast.
We appreciate it.
So listener, if you think about it, say a prayer for Isaac and his wife. They are just so excited about adopting, and we just can't wait to see how their family grows and how the Lord is going to bless that. So, and you guys are probably thinking as well about, man, I want to travel. It's vacation time. Summer is here. It's quickly approaching. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of places that we can go and travel to. For me, I would say one of my bucket list items of traveling would be to New Zealand. There's some amazing, beautiful just places to hike and explore. And so that's one of my hobbies. And so that would be a spot that's probably a bucket list item for me as well. So anyway, as we're talking about exploring and traveling, it's just a fun to kind of think through and brainstorm, because we know like our world is big, right? Like sometimes we make our world, like our individual worlds, really small. But the world that God made is really big, and there are cultures and languages and people all around that are so different from us who need to hear the good news of Jesus, right? And we have this amazing great commission from Jesus that says, go into all the world and share, right? To make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them of what I've learned, and that he will be with us. And so this is the good news that we get to share about with kids this week and with preschoolers. But the elephant in the room is that kids and preschoolers probably aren't going around the world right now. And so I think there's a little bit of a, just something that it would be helpful for us to talk about is, how do we talk about in tangible ways, hey, kids, you are part of this great commission. You are part of this special story to share about Jesus around the world, that we can tell around the world about who Jesus is. And yet your kids and preschoolers may not be actually going to different countries and talking about Jesus. So Isaac, talk with us a little bit. How can we kind of talk with kids and preschoolers in a way that it makes sense for them as we kind of unpack what the Great Commission is and how we can share it collectively?
For sure. I think that when we talk about how Jesus said go, it is because I've loved these themes this month, and it with the theme of big news for preschoolers and amp it up for kids. I love how this is something that we want to turn the volume up. We can't keep it to ourselves. It's something we have to share, not only with the people that are our neighbors, not only our friends, not only our family, but all around the world. And I think some of the practical ways that we can help instill that love for the nations, for the people that aren't in our backyard, is there are a few things as kids. One of the things I love, I've come from a CentriKid background, and we had this pray, give, go mentality. And I think that's something that we can even instill in our kids right now, where we can pray for the people around the world. Even though we can't go there, we know that God is with them and he is doing amazing things. So we can pray for them. And some of that could be praying for a specific missionary that you can connect with, praying for a certain mission organization that are on the ground there, praying and getting connected with a certain group there, maybe having some of those conversations. I think one of the coolest things when I was in children's ministry is we prayed for a specific missionary that was down in Peru. And then I actually got him to send our kids a video about what they were doing and how their prayer and how their giving were actually impacting what they were doing thousands and thousands of miles away. So another thing that they can do is give. And I think that being able to give towards a mission project is such a cool way for kids to send resources, to send, put in some of their own personal effort, put in some of their personal energy into sharing the good news of Jesus all across the world. So maybe that is raising money and having a boys versus girls competition. One thing that I love that my church does, my wife is the missions director at the church, and she puts together this big global mission thing that the whole church can do, where we actually fill, I should know this number off the top of my head. I think it's 4,000 meals for kids in Africa. And we actually put these meal prep things together, and then we send them off. And then we actually send a team who gets to hand deliver them to the kids in Africa. So the kids the kids in the ministry that I'm teaching at can't go to Africa, but they're making food for the kids in Africa that people at our church are handing out. And I love that that is something where they can feel like they are a part of it. So when they see the same little meal bags that they vacuum sealed in our church lobby on a Saturday morning being handed to kids that is in a completely different continent, that is a way that they can see the love of Jesus being shared. And then, of course, they can go on little mission trips. There are fun little mission trips that I think you can take your kids on, whether that's something that just gets them used to going out into their neighborhood or going out into their city, but giving them a chance to actually leave the walls of a church, to leave maybe the city limits or something along those lines, and being able to talk to people about Jesus, being able to serve people in the name of Jesus is such a cool opportunity for kids.
That's amazing. I love that tangible aspect of, you have kids who can pack meals and they can then they can see those meals delivered. That's such a cool progression of how your church does that. I love that. I would say as well, we were really intentional about how we talked about this particular main idea of we can tell the world, right? So every other time that we talk about or the main idea this month, it's I can tell my family, I can tell a friend, I can tell my neighbors, we can tell the world, because on one side of things, we want to give preschoolers and kids those tangible tools of what they can do. But with this particular session, we really want to help those preschoolers and kids understand this is a collective movement. This is not just me personally, individually. This is us. This is the church. This is us together. And so all of those ways that you just mentioned, giving, going, like being part of mission-oriented things, praying with your family or with your church about a mission organization or, missionaries in other parts of the world. Those are all ways that kids are participating in that movement of going, right? And so as we're teaching kids this week and as we're talking with preschoolers about how we can tell the world, really emphasizing the we in that. Like, this is the church. This is us as followers of Jesus. This is what Jesus gave us to do. This is his plan for us, and we get to be part of it in these very special ways. So that's really great. All right, so Rachel, we know that the call of Jesus, right, it's to come and see and then go and show. And so we've seen that already this month in some of the stories that we've talked about, like Philip and Nathaniel, or with Andrew who brought his brother Peter, and how there is a come and see who Jesus is. And then once you see and understand, then go and tell and show who Jesus is in your community, with your friends, with your family, and around the world. So this particular, Bible story is very much a go and show story. But how can Jesus' call for us to tell the world really encourage a kid who maybe hasn't put their faith in Jesus yet? Remembering that, the kids in our ministry, we are doing that spiritual formation work. And so some have believed and trusted in Jesus, but there are others in our ministries who are in a pre-faith step, right? They haven't trusted in Jesus yet. So how can this particular go and show story of a mandate of the church to go and tell about who Jesus is, how can we navigate that with kids or preschoolers who maybe haven't trusted in Jesus yet?
Yeah, I think that this is a great way to talk to our preschoolers and our kids who are not believers yet about what the life of following Jesus is like. Because I think sometimes we accidentally teach or accidentally reinforce that we want you to come and see Jesus. We want you to experience Jesus and begin following him. And then that's it. You check the box. You're done. You're a believer in Jesus. And we don't give the right perspective that when we come and see Jesus, when we experience Jesus and are changed by him and we begin following him, that's the start of this whole life with Jesus. And it's not the finish line. And so this story is such an exciting thing to show our preschoolers and our kids who are not believers yet, that there is a fulfilling life. There's a purpose and a plan for them that God has given them. And it is to go and to show and to tell about Jesus. And so it's just a neat way to point them into an understanding that when they begin to follow Jesus, this plan unfolds for them. Because following Jesus isn't the end, but it's the start to this really amazing life of going and telling.
Yeah, absolutely. What an incredible opportunity we have to do just that, to say this is the start, right? This is the start of relationship that continues forever and ever and ever. And we get to be part of what Jesus is already doing. And what a great opportunity to talk about who Jesus is and what it means to have a relationship. Or in preschool, we talk about what it means to have a friendship with God, and how Jesus came so we could have a friendship with God, and being able to understand that. It also really speaks, right, to that longing for a child's identity, to understand who they are and to make a difference in the world. And so kind of really leaning into helping kids understand, like, God has a purpose and a plan for their lives. And that purpose and a plan is intentional to change who they are inside from this brokenness to this new identity of being made new. And so it's just such a great opportunity to talk about how we, the church, collectively get to go and show, and also for those who haven't understood yet, come and see, right? Come and see who Jesus is. Come and see who he is. Let me tell you more about him, that you can get to know him and how he wants to have a relationship with you. So as we wrap up today, I think that sometimes when we think about the world and telling about how we can tell the world about Jesus, it's important for us to be mindful about what are the things that our kids know about the world? What are the images that they're seeing? And oftentimes we know that, if kids catch glimpses of newsfeed or maybe something on social media, there's a lot of hard stuff that's happening in our world because our world is broken. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of poverty. How can we, really help kids who are struggling with what is happening in our world today? How can we encourage them with this great commission of how we get to go into all the world and tell people about Jesus?
Yeah, it is sometimes, honestly, even as someone who follows Jesus, it can be disheartening seeing all of the things that are happening in our world right now. And it can feel like such a big task for us to complete. But I think that the good news with all of this is that Jesus has said, go, but go in my name. This isn't something that we are ever going to do alone. This is not a world or a task that we can take on by ourselves. It is only through God's power. And I think that when we have these conversations with kids, one of the reasons I do love Three Circles, it is very clear that, hey, God created a perfect world, but sin broke it. So when we see these things on social media, when we see these things on the news, when we see these awful things happening all around the world, it isn't because God's not there. It is because of the brokenness that has happened in the world that is caused by sin, and how we all need God, how our world needs God. They need to hear the good news of who Jesus is, what he came to do, and the power that he can have in our lives to fill those voids of the things that we try to fill them with, whether it's the power that people want in the world, or it's the greed, or all of these things that lead to these awful things. But it's only through God that we can have that peace, that we can have that grace, that we can have, honestly, that we can have a relationship with God that brings us all of those things in different ways. So I think that one thing that we can share with kids is that there is hope in God, that when we go, when we pray, when we love the people around us that even are hard to love, I think that there is a great opportunity to share with these kids that, hey, the world needs God, and we have an opportunity to show them.
Yeah, I would agree. And, sometimes we have to fight against our own tendencies because we do live in an area of the world that there is so much privilege to think like, oh, I have the special message. I'm the only one, and then I'm going to go share it and they don't have it, right? I think it's helpful for us to remember ourselves and to remind kids, like, God is bigger than we know. He is bigger than the world. Like, think about the whole world. Think about different countries. Maybe look up and kind of talk through, like, did you know this was a country? Did you know that's a country? But helping us see the big expansiveness of our entire world, and also God made that. Like, he's bigger than all of it, and he is in all of it. And so, we don't want to have any kind of comparison of, well, our small little tiny world is so much better than the whole big world because it's all, broken. Our worlds are broken too. And so I think it's an opportunity to show and share with kids, like, all of the world is broken. Like, the things that are happening in our lives are broken. The things that are happening in other places in the world are also broken. But that doesn't mean God's not there. That doesn't mean that God doesn't see. That doesn't mean that he is not a part and actively working in the world, because he loves and cares about it, and he will come and one day make it all new again. But until he does, we have this really great opportunity to join him in this bigger movement that's so much bigger than us, that's so much bigger than than just one person or one individual to be part of sharing who Jesus is, inviting others to come and see, to recognize and to know who God is, and to have that relationship with him. So, listeners, we are so thankful that you have joined us for another episode of this High Five Preschool and Kids Training Podcast. We hope the training is helpful, or at least the conversations are helpful. We have a lot of fun and learn a lot about Isaac's disc golf sometimes. But regardless, we hope that really that these conversations are just sparks and nuggets for you that are jumping off points for conversations that you get to have with your leaders, with your volunteers, with your families, as you prepare and teach each week about who God is and how he transforms us, about how we can know who we are because of who God is. So we thank you for listening. We're grateful for you and the work that you are doing. And next week, we are jumping into a brand new month.
Let's go.
Obviously, it's a brand new month, but we're excited about a brand new theme. And so we are going to be talking about how we are one of a kind in preschool, and in kids, we're going to be talking about how we are remarkably made. So you are not going to want to miss next week's episode as we jump in and talk about how we are uniquely designed and made special by God. It's going to be such a fun month. You're not going to want to miss it. Until next time, thanks for joining us.